Hey, Mike Raine here with Canadian Musician. Right now in the very cool Gibson Showroom in downtown Toronto, and with me is Canada's one of Canada's most renowned blues guitarists, fittingly enough, Steve Strongman. Steve, man, how you doing? Thanks for doing this.
I'm doing great, thank you. Nice to be here.
So, of course, the reason we're here, you're kind of ramping up the PR blitz. You were just saying you have a new album coming out in March, so a couple months from now, but it'll be called No Time Like Now. Lead single is out. I guess may as well start with the new album. It's not too far off the heels of your last album from 2015, Let Me Prove It to You. Essentially, what are you trying to, I don't know if this is the right way of putting it, but like, what are you trying to accomplish with this album, or is it simply the batch of songs that you had ready to go? Essentially, what was the thinking process behind this album?
Yeah, this was interesting. I'm glad it doesn't feel like too much of a departure, because as an artist, when you're right inside of it, sometimes it can feel like a bit of a departure. And you know, this album for me was really interesting to make because, you know, going back a couple of CDs, I had an acoustic bass CD which did really well for me, and then as you mentioned, I had Let Me Prove It to You, which went really well. Both of those were produced by my buddy Rob Zabo. And so I went back to Rob again and I said, you know, I really feel like I want to do something a little bit different with this next record. And what we've been approaching is writing more than we ever have. You know, I think a lot of artists make the mistake of just going, oh, I've got 10 or 12 or 13 songs ready, let's put out an album. And we didn't want to do that with this. We had an idea of making a really exciting guitar-driven record, and that became No Time Like Now.
Is that to imply that before, in the previous two albums with Rob, you guys were kind of writing in the studio? It was more maybe written off of jams or improvisational stuff, and this time it's a little more prepared heading into the studio, or am I misunderstanding that?
No, we with all of the releases, that was one of the things that Rob as a producer always tried to impress upon me, which is the more material that we have to draw from, the stronger the end result is going to be. And I think that that's exactly what we did on all of the records that he's produced for me, and especially this one. But we were just, you know, I think it's the job of an artist to constantly push the boundaries a little bit. And a lot of artists can become really complacent with what they do, and especially if they have any type of success with it. But you know, I've never been like that. I've always I love a lot of different styles of music, and I think that comes out. And with No Time Like Now, it's a really exciting, newer feeling type of release for me.
Does that songwriter, when you mentioned having done, even working with the same producer, but having done a more acoustic-based blues album compared to No Time Like Now, which is very much back to kind of that stomping electric blues that maybe people know you best for, is that a very different writing process for you, or do the songs generally start the same way regardless?
Well, I think the songs, I just, when I'm writing, and I wrote a lot with Rob on this record as well, we just let the songs dictate what's going to happen. And then with No Time Like Now, we had an idea. I mean, you can't have such an eclectic kind of recording that everything's way left and way right of what it is. You want to try and keep the thrust of the record the same. And we did that with No Time Like Now. But these songs, when we're writing, we just sort of try and let them happen and stay out of the way of the songs. And then we go back and see, okay, is this fitting or is it not? And as a matter of fact, one of the tunes on the record, a tune called "The Day They Carry Me Away," that was previously written, and then we brought it back, and it made it on this record, which I was really happy about. But it was like a different feeling song, and we just found a way to make it all be coherent within this record.
Despite the fact you've won Best Blues Songwriter for the Maple Blues Awards in the past, as well as 2 awards for Best Guitarist, but it seems like when I see the conversation about you or being introduced, I even did it myself, maybe subconsciously or whatever, but like it's always like blues guitarist first, and that's for good reason. Like you're an incredible blues guitarist, obviously, but do you find sometimes, do you think of yourself in equal measure as a songwriter and wish sometimes that was getting equal billing to your guitar playing?
Well, thank you. That's a very good point, actually. I always think of myself as a guitar player first. Okay. You know, but I obviously write and I sing, and to me it's about a whole package deal. But in terms of how I think of myself, and even with the writing that I do, most of the time it starts with a guitar riff or a guitar idea. And, you know, it's different. Sometimes it'll be a lyric and I'll decide to write something on there. But I guess, you know, sometimes people want to keep you in a box, and they would go, no, you're a guitar player, this is what you do. And I think that I did sort of break out of that a little bit with making a very different record back then, and I think this is also in the same type of a thinking process, which is this is different, and No Time Like Now is definitely like that. But being a strong guitar player has always been the number one thing for me, and I just constantly try and get better, and I love playing so much, and we wanted to make a guitar-driven record, which is what we did.
I guess going back to the beginning there, I think speaking of your guitar chops, you grew up in Kitchener. I guess not a place known as a hotbed of blues music, and so like, where does your love of the blues come from? But also, where do your guitar chops come from? Like, did you grow up in a musical family? Where did you have much of a background, or was it kind of spontaneous?
Yeah, I have no idea why I decided to start playing guitar. I wish that there was like an aha moment where I said, "Oh wow, that's it." I came home one day and I told my mom that I wanted to play guitar. I was 10 years old, and so she got me lessons, and I got really serious about playing guitar when I was about 15 years old, which is quite a while ago now. But I guess. I toured in so many different bands. I was in a rock band with Rob Zabo called Plasticine, and we had some success in Canada. And that was a real kind of a rock pop band, so I love that style of music. But then I also, I dabbled, I studied jazz, and I toured with a country band. So all of these things mixed in together is what ends up, I hope, sounding somewhat unique and sounding like me, right? So, but, I love so many different styles of playing. Like, I love, greats like Kenny Burrell. And as you mentioned, growing up in Kitchener, there was no one that was a bigger mentor for me than Mel Brown. Mm-hmm. Mel Brown was just an absolute incredible guitar player, and he just raised the bar for everybody that was around when he came here and settled in Kitchener, which was very lucky for us. And, I think that being able to see that firsthand and being able to see a world-class guitar player firsthand really influenced a lot of us, and it forced us all to go, okay, if you're going to do this, you better have something to say when you get up there.
Yeah, absolutely. How old were you when you first met Mel?
I think I was 15, 15 or 16 years old.
So a very kind of formative period. Kind of lucky for you.
That's right. And then one of the songs on No Time Like Now, a song called Old School, is actually kind of about that meeting when I snuck up the fire escape when I was, I think, 16 years old at a great blues club called Pop the Gator. Nice. And I saw Mel Brown, and he was playing there with Kim Wilson and James Harmon and Luther Tucker and all these amazing world-class blues artists. Yes. And that's the time that I realized I love Stevie Ray Vaughan and classic rock. Mm-hmm. And then when I saw what they were doing, I realized they're drawing from the same influences that I'm seeing right now. Yeah. And that really hit home for me. And I went, that's really, it's such an emotional thing.
Very cool. I guess speaking of world-class Canadian classic rockers, you have Randy Bachman. You do a cover. I'm not even sure if it's considered a cover when you get the guy that wrote it to play with you on it. but you do. You ain't seen nothing yet on the new album, and you brought in Randy Bachman himself to play on it. Did you know Randy before this, or did you just like, hey, let's give it a shot, see if he'd be interested?
I did. I had the pleasure of opening up for Randy. I think, believe it or not, it was about 20 years ago when I first opened up for Randy at the Key to Bala. And I was just so thrilled to obviously open up for an amazing legend. And I struck up a conversation with the drummer in his band at the time, and I didn't realize this, but it was actually his son, Tal Bachman. Tal, who's a wonderful artist in his own right.
Who you've played with before, I believe.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how it all started. And then Tal and I, we really hit it off, and he invited me to go to Hawaii when he was recording his record. So I did that, and we stayed friends throughout that whole process. And so anyway, Randy and I, he's always been, very, very supportive of what I've done and kept an eye on me and played me on his great show on CBC. And so when I decided that I wanted to do a cover song, which is something that I hadn't done in a while on one of my records, I thought, I've always loved Randy's songs. Like it's just, obviously, it's undeniable. He's just, the guy's like a hit machine, So I picked that song to do, and we decided to, change it up enough that it would be hopefully kind of new, but people would still realize what kind of song it was. So then I actually I just got in touch with Randy because, as I said, I knew him, and I sent him an MP3 of it. And he got back to me and he said, I love this. This is so cool, which was so flattering. Yeah. And then I just said to him, do you feel like playing guitar on it? and that's how it all happened.
Very cool. I've had the pleasure of meeting, interviewing Randy a few times, and it's no wonder he got a radio show. The guy can talk forever, and he's like a music encyclopedia, and he's just entertaining and fascinating. But I know probably more than anyone, well, easily probably more than anyone I've ever met, he can talk about guitars for days. Yeah. and he often refers to other musicians and guitarists as his guitar brothers. So like, what's that experience like? Do you two bond on that level just as musicians? Like, how, for you, what is it like just chatting with Randy and picking his brain?
I mean, as I said, he's, as well as you said, he literally is like an encyclopedia of knowledge and stories, and they're just amazing. And I remember Randy he's such a great guy. I actually stayed at his house in White Rock when I started playing with Tal. And so we would sit around and play guitar, and he laid this CD on me, this double CD of the great Lenny Breau, because like Randy's such an amazing guitarist himself, but he's a huge fan of guitars and guitar players, you know. So that is definitely something that we bonded on, and he was so great that we actually I played at the CNE here in Toronto, and in the summertime I did this song with him, and it was amazing. He invited me to do it, and we had a blast.
Speaking of guitars, and I guess there's no better place. We're here in the Gibson showroom, not to plug them or anything, but and it doesn't have to be Gibson. And just in all honesty, what's I feel it's only proper to ask what your rig is. What are your go-to guitars and amps, both in the studio and live?
Absolutely, no, and that's an easy question for me to answer because that's why I started getting affiliated with Gibson. Very thankfully, is because I've always been a Gibson guy. So my go-to guitar is a Gibson 335, an ES 335 dot. I've got three of them, and I also have I have a Les Paul that we used a lot on this record, which is kind of turning into a bit of a go-to guitar for me. But I'm most at home playing a 335. I just think there's just, you know, the amount of sounds that you can get out of that instrument is absolutely incredible. And same for acoustics. My go-to acoustic is a Gibson Blues King. And I also have a Gibson J45, which I absolutely love. It's great sounding guitar. And in terms of amps that I'm using, it was all over the board. We really tried to let the sounds sort of, you know, is that the sound we're going for? And we reamped a few things. But live, it's mostly Fender amps that I've been going to. And, you know, pedals and...
Is it just that classic tone?
Yeah, to me, you know, I've tried a lot of different amplifiers, but to me, in my opinion, a Fender can take a beating kind of more than the rest of them, and it still stays truer for longer. Yeah. So I play DeVille's, and they're kind of readily available at a lot of the festivals, whether you're playing in Europe or doing fly-ins or whatever. They're always available. So I've tailored my rig that I can just sort of plug into that and still have it sound like me.
And I guess lastly here, ahead of, or I guess in the lead up to the release of No Time Like Now, I guess for fans, maybe there's somebody listening or watching this right now who has heard your name, know you won awards, but isn't familiar with your back catalog. So I'm interested just if someone is to kind of pick and choose from your back catalog, what to you are your standout songs? Maybe the songs that you felt were a turning point or that are just the best examples of what you do, can be kind of any parameters you want to put on it.
Yeah, well, that's always a difficult thing for a songwriter, especially No Time Like Now is my sixth record now, so it's hard to just kind of pick, oh, you should check this one out. But honestly, there are some standouts. Yeah. You know, for my first record, there's a song called Soul Search, and that has remained a staple in every one of my sets. And you know, that was a song that it happened very quickly for me, and it still rings true to this day. So that's something that I always play. So there's that. There's Honey, which is also from my first record, and I think that, you know, that when I released that record, it was such a big moment for me because that was me sort of saying I'm ready to be my own artist. So that record's really special. But honestly, I'm really proud of everything that I've released. I was just telling Brad from Gibson here this morning, you know, going back and listening to some of your stuff, a lot of artists can go back and go, oh, geez, I don't know what I was thinking then, or But honestly, for me, like I'm really proud of all the releases that I've done, and I think No Time Like Now is just going to continue on that path. I'm really happy with it.
Very cool. And again, with the album coming out now, this will be the last. Where can people see you across Canada in the coming months? What are your touring plans?
There's going to be some, looks like some touring out west for sure, and we're actually working on dates right now. So I would say that they're constantly being updated. So the best thing to do is go to my website. If you go to stevestrongman.com, they'll all be up there, and I'm definitely going across Canada for sure.
Fantastic. Steve, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for making the time for this. I know it's a busy day for you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
My pleasure.